Hey guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. If you guys are new here, welcome. Today we're going to talk about the newest Beauty Bay palette, and that is the Age of Opulence palette. And these are the two looks that I created using this palette. This palette is the holiday palette for Beauty Bay this year for 2021, and this palette has a deep dark grungy tones of purples and pinks and blues and greens and neutrals all mixed together. I can clearly see like a differentiation. It's not like a purple palette or a green palette or a neutral palette. It basically has like 5 purpley pinky shades. It has 5 blue green shades and 5 neutral shades. That's how I see the palette. So this palette retails for $20 and this has 20 shades in it. I'm not a big fan of the packaging of the palette, but the box that it comes in is beautiful. I think if the palette was like plain like this, I would have appreciated it more. But nevertheless, it's pretty sturdy. It has like a magnetic closure, so that's really good. So this palette has 8 shimmers and 12 mattes. I think that's a good ratio for like an eyeshadow palette. It has great neutral shimmers. It has lightning shimmers for the inner corners. It has great shimmer shades like a lid shade, and it has great smoky shades. I love the color story. We'll dive into the final thoughts at the end of the video, but now let's move on to the swatches of the palette. I'm not going to swatch the shades row by row because the swatches stained my arm pretty deeply and pretty intensely, so I don't want to mess that up right now. But I'm going to show it on the screen how it looks, and let me tell you more about the palette, what Beauty Bay says. Take the center stage and celebrate lavishly with the Age of Opulence eyeshadow palette. Inspired by glamour, decadence, and the new roaring 20s, the 20 shade eyeshadow palette is here to help you create looks that deserve the limelight with velvety mattes and intense shimmers, all in a pigment-rich formula. These shades have a seamlessly blendable texture and major staying power for the indulgent looks, more opulent than the last. So that's the description of the palette. I absolutely love the swatches. I did not have any problems swatching this palette. There was no skipping. Even when I applied it on the eyes, you will see how seamlessly it blended towards each other. I feel all in all, it's a great palette. But yes, now let's move on to the looks. I'm going to mix the shade called Flapper and RSVP together just to get more of a muted pink shade in the crease. So let's start with that. Yeah. So these shades definitely do mix well together. Good to know, good to know. Oh, that's a beautiful transitioning shade. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, good step, good step. This is the first time I'm like working with Beauty Bay eyeshadows. So I actually do not know what to expect out of it. So I'm not expecting great things and I'm not expecting worse things because I've heard a lot of good things about this palette, especially the shimmers, which I cannot wait to try. I'm going to test out majority of the shades on my eyes and see how it rolls. Should I do 2 looks? I think we should do 2 looks. What do you say? Okay, let's move. I'm going to take this shade Lavish from the palette, the blue. It's very unlike me to dip into blues when purples are there, but let's see. I'm gonna take that in the crease too and see how it blends together, because I know it swatches beautifully. So I just want to see how it blends and mixes with that pink shade, and so far so good. I'm seeing a lot of pigment and I'm going with like the lightest pressure ever. So it definitely does mix in very well. As you can see, when like pink and blue mixes, it's giving me that purple effect. I'm going to dip back into the shade called Flapper from the palette and then go over the edges. I'm going to take the shade called Silk Stockings on the same blender brush. I'm just going to blend the edges so that there's no harsh lines. where I'm blending like that. So we have like a nice smokiness going there. Now we're going to dip into the shade called Curfew from the palette, and this is more of the navy blue shade. I'm going to tuck it right in the outer corners. Look at the pigment. It's crazy pigmented. It's just that I am going with a light hand. I'm going to just tuck the lower lash line's outer corner with that blue. Let's start off with the lid and see where we go. I'm going to take the shade called Decadent from the palette, and this is more of the purpley blue shade. And I'm going to spray my brush slightly and then go over like the outer portions with this shade. Look at that pigment. It's stunning. Wow, I like that. I like that a lot. I'm going to dip back into that shade called Curfew, which is that navy blue, and just pack it right there where we would have blended it off. Right, like that. And then let's dip into another shade. What should we take? I think we should take Revival. Let's take this blue shade, Revival. Very unlike me, I know. But that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take Revival. Oh my god! Look at the pigment. It's a flaky shadow, so it will give you fallout. Not terrible, but I'm gonna spray my brush so that I can avoid it, just because I have already done my face makeup. I'm just gonna spray it so that there's no fallout. The pigment is stunning. And as you can see, I'm going more on like this slanted way. I applied the dark navy blue shade right in the outer corners in a slanted motion. Then I applied the deep purple shade, and then I applied that cobalt blue shade. I'm going to dip into this shade, which is called Crush from the palette. This has a slight pinkiness also to it, but it has a lot of gold also. I'm going to tuck that in the inner corner and then mix it with the blue shade. I feel like these shadows, because it's more on the flaky side, it might like pull very nicely on the fingers. So let's try that. See, that went like a dream. I generally do apply all my shimmers with the fingers. I don't know why I didn't apply this with the finger. Actually, I don't know why, because it stained my hand previously when I was like swatching it. Okay, so I'm going to take the same blender brush, just go over the edges, just intensify a little more with that blue shade in the center. The shimmers are stunning, absolutely stunning. Now let's move on to the lower lash line. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the shade called Rich from the palette and tuck it right with that deep blue that we applied. Let's take the shade called Gold Digger from the palette, and I'm going to apply that in my inner corners and then get it right in the inner part of my lower lash line too. Super pigmented shadows, super pigmented. Okay, so I'm going to finish off this eye with some liner and mascara, and I'll get right back to finish off the other eye. So that's how it's looking so far. This look definitely needed a lash, so I applied Glamnetic lashes in the style Venus, and that is the final look, guys. Now let's move on to the other eye. Why not do two looks, right? Now the point is, would I need to take off this that I already applied in the crease or not? Let's see. I'm going to take this shade, which is called Silk Stockings, and this is more or less my skin shade. So I'm just going to go over it just so that the pinkiness is a lot less. There'll still be a little bit of a purple coming through, but that's okay. I just want like a very, very light wash of purple, nothing major. Yeah, I think that is much better. Because we went blue and purples in this, I think we should do more of green and neutral in this. What do you say? I think we should do that. So I'm going to take Silk Stockings and Prohibition, both mixed together so that we get some kind of a transitioning shade, like a cool transitioning shade. Cool as in like cooler tone, not like cool, you know. Okay, so once we have that as a transitioning shade on our crease, let's start playing with our greens because I want to see how it rolls. I'm going to start with the shade called Hope, and this is more of like I would say an emerald green. I'm going to start with the outer corners. These shadows are super pigmented, so I start off with like a very light amount, and you can definitely build it up, as you can see. I'm going to do the same thing on my inner corner too, because let's go for a halo eye, because why not? Man, what is with me and greens? I've done so much green this month on my channel. I'm doubting myself. Who is even Smithy? I'm going to take the shade called Rich from the palette, and I'm going to take that in like the outermost corner just to deepen it up a tiny little bit, because that shade is like deep forest green shade. I'm going to tuck that in the inner corner and the outer corner. Nothing much, just a tiny little bit. I'm also going to take a tiny little bit of the shade called Speak Easy, which is that deep plum shade from the palette. I'm going to tuck that in the inner and outer corners too. And I'm taking that shade just because we have a slight pinkiness going in the crease, and that would complement this shade really well. And it would not look like a mistake, it would look like an intentional move. Do you see how I create my looks? I mean, I am no professional, guys. There you go. And then for the lower lash line, I'm going to take the shade called Prohibition, which is that brown shade from the palette. I'm going to tuck that on my lower lash line. These are definitely pigments, so be very careful. When you're swatching, you will see staining, and I'm pretty sure I will see staining on my eyes too. I'm going to take the shade called Speak Easy again. I'm going to apply that also on my lower lash line. Now for the lid shade, I really want to take that shade which is called Vintage from the palette, because that looks stunning. Probably should have taken it with the fingers like the last shadow, but we'll see. Oh my god, look at that. I'm going to take that with the fingers because I know it's not going to give me any fallout with my fingers, and it gives me more payout. Then why not? Oh my god, that's stunning. That's such a beautiful shade. Oh, I love that. And I love how that green is also peeking through. I'm going to intensify that green a tiny little bit. I'm going to take that shade Hope from the palette. I'm going to just melt that shade with that dirty bronzy shade, just like that. And I'm going to take my tiny little flat brush, and I'm going to dip into the shade called Gold Digger from the palette, just a tiny little bit. I'm going to take it right in the center of that shadow, just so that light reflects onto the center of my eye, just a tiny little bit more. I'm going to take the same shade on my inner corners. All the shimmers, actually the lighter shimmers, look very, very close to each other, but all of them are super, super different. I would say this has more of a coppery gold shade. This is a true gold shade, and this has a lot of pink in it. This is more of like that copper rust shade. So I'm just going to finish this eye with some liner and mascara. Actually, let me just apply the same magnetic lashes on the other end and I'll get right back. So that's my final look. On the lips, I have actually NYX Nude Truffle, and I finished it off with the lipstick with KKW Beauty's Nude 2, which is like the pale nude shade. And I just topped it off right in the center of my lips, and that's it. Just because the eyes are so dramatic, I wanted to keep my lips very neutral. So that's how everything is looking so far. I know when you look at both the eyes together, it's going to be a little different, but let me show you one at a time so that you can see it. So again, this is look number 1. Went with a lot of colors and with a lot of drama. And this is more of like a neutral smoky eye. All in all, I really like the palette. I would say this palette is really good for like medium tan to like deep skin tones, because it has like some great deepening shades, and the shimmers are very, very nice. I mean, it's very sparkly, it's very blendable, it's very nice. I would say if you are on like a fair to light skin tone, you would have to pair this palette with another palette which is for like the transitioning shades, just because otherwise you'll get all like deep smoky eyes. If you are looking for that like deep grungy smoky eyes, this would be really, really good for you, because I clearly can see like the purpley tones here, and then I can see those green tones here, green and blue tones, and then I can see all the neutral pops of shades here. Now when I opened this palette, I really thought that this shade and this shade is very, very close to each other, but I'll show it to you. This is very, very pale, and this is more like my skin tone shade. So if you guys can see that as a difference, this is very, very light and this is more of my skin tone. So I actually use this shadow to mix in with any other like deepening shades to get more of a transitioning shade, as you guys saw in my looks what I did. So all in all, I feel like this is a very, very good quality palette. I would love to play with this again and create like smoky, dark, grungy looks, especially for fall. I think this is so worth the money. So that's all for today, guys. If you did like this video, do give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comment section below which look did you like, look number 1 or look number 2. And also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!